On this episode of CosProps, we're going to show you how to make our version of the Wolverine claws.
Alright, so here we're pouring the resin for the mold using a cheap resin that we bought. Using 4 ounces of resin, going to pour it in the silicone mold that we made ourselves. Here I'm putting in 10 drops of hardener for every ounce, so there's 40 drops of hardener going in. Wow.
And we'll show on future episodes how we made that mold.
It's a pretty simple recipe. Here just mixing up the resin. It's pretty thin stuff, so it doesn't take long. Work time on that resin is probably about 5 or 7 minutes, so you need to pour it pretty quick after you mix it up, or it'll turn to goo in your cup and you won't be able to pour it.
I think a big thing too is you'll see him squeezing the sides of the mold, just making sure that it fills completely up. There's no air pockets or anything like that.
If you get an air pocket in your mold, one of the fastest ways to ruin an otherwise good cast, and a lot of times it's unsalvageable. So, usually if you just squeeze the side and bring the resin up and let it sink back down, you'll pop out any air pockets that's in it. Now here's about 20 minutes later. It should be set apart enough to handle by now.
The mold's really tough, so you can be rough with it getting it out. It's really not that hard. It doesn't stick really all that bad.
Usually the only thing that'll stick to silicone is silicone, so just about everything will pop out of the mold pretty easy. All you gotta do is just kind of break the seal, run your finger along it and help it. Then just carefully pull it out to make sure you don't rip the mold or break off any part of the resin while it's still fresh.
Yeah. At this point the resin's still a little hot and still a little pliable too. If you apply force you could bend it if needed a little bit. But other than that, within 10 to 15 minutes it'll be completely set.
And here at the end too, we're pointing at what they call flash. It's resin that went beyond the mold. It'll have to be ground off to, could make a better mold, but it's not that big of a deal. It's a pretty good mold, and all of them turned out pretty good, I think.
Yeah, they were all generally exactly the same, pretty much. And, here I'm on the grinding wheel, and I'm just taking off the excess, the flash. I'm going to get a general shape that I'm satisfied with.
This process is a few minutes long, so I went ahead and sped it up just so you can kind of see what all's going on without making the video too long. Mostly just smoothing all the flash off all the way down it and rounding the top a little bit. You can see the dull finish where it's all been sanded. Resin's pretty shiny when it's first cast. So.
It's hard to tell, but the grinding wheel does take it off pretty fast. You also have to be careful. And here I'm using the Dremel to start the detailing. Get it look the way I want it to. It's like a $15 Dremel, and it works really good for me. a lot of other more expensive Dremels that you'll see, they're a lot bigger and bulkier and heavier. This one, just easier to work with, you know.
A few different angles, and he's just about got it to where it needs to be by this point. You know. Just really bringing that tip down to a point and getting that knuckle on the end of it formed.
Yeah, I didn't change bits in this through the whole process. Just used like a heavy grit sand on it, and really the shape that I was going for is inspired by the early Wolverine comics, and, but it's a creation of our own, sculpted from pottery clay and then heated, and that's what we made our mold out of.
Right there, he's just checking to make sure it fits against the knuckle and that it's straight and has the pretty good shape that he's happy with. Here, just cutting a little bit off the bottom in order to give the wire a little bit more room to be able to work with it before connecting it into the handle. Pretty quick touch up.
High-tech stuff, kids.
Starting to look like Wolverine.
Pyong.
Oh yeah.
Oh no. You do not know the power of the dark side. Yes, you.
And here's a little tricky part. If you're not familiar with the drill, it's easy to go crooked and blow out the side or go all the way through the claw. So if you're not familiar with the claw, you might want to, with the drill, you might want to practice on some scrap pieces first.
Yeah, definitely recommend that.
And this is pretty tedious drilling right here. He's like a drill press. He's a machine. As you'll see more and more as the video goes.
It's not a man, it's a machine.
I'll just break you. Though we try not to break these.
Yeah, this the wire that we're using, it's heavy gauge fencing wire. What did you say the gauge was on that?
It's a 9-gauge chain link fence that it come off of, so we had a bunch of it laying around as a good cheap way to make them. It's super heavy duty. It's hard to bend without, you know, tools like a vise and such.
That's the thing that we noticed with a lot of claws that you'll see is they're just not as sturdy as I would like them to be, so we really wanted to focus on making these really sturdy. Like I drilled my holes really deep, almost to the very top of the claw, as you can see.
Yeah, holding it up to where it's at. He's only got about a 1/4 inch before it pops out the top, so it's about as deep as it can get. Here we're starting on the handle using a 2x6 and made a little outline on the inside of our hand. It's a guide tracing it out. Turns out it's half as wide as the board, so I can make one cut and get 4 pieces. The board's actually twice as thick as we need it to be, so once I cut it off and cut it to size, we'll rip it in half and get 4 out. And kids, don't try this at home.
Mind you don't cut your fingers, Mordecai.
It's not as close as it looks, but it is still dangerous. You really wouldn't hurt to have somebody else holding the board for you if you've got anybody, but just just be mindful of this all. It does get more dangerous as this gets smaller. And now that we're halfway as small as it needs to be.
Oh God.
So you can see it's a little too thick. So that's going to have to be ripped in half now. Here's
Oh no. Oh no.
So, yeah. So here you just want to pin it down and move your hand out of the way. Do not press down until your hands are out. If you have a safer way to do it, we recommend that. But we live dangerously, so looks like a good fit.
Yeah.
Now that I come back inside with all my fingers still intact, we'll tackle the rest of this.
You can pretty well see through that resin if you hold it up to the light. So I'm just checking to make sure that the wire's going all the way to the top. Sturdy fit. You can see just how tough that wire is.
It's not something you can just bend with a couple of sets of pliers. Not very easily, anyway. As Brandon mentioned earlier, a lot of the claws that you see available out there, if you shake them side to side, they wobble all over the place with a thin wire. And, we wanted something a lot heavier duty, and this is about the heaviest wire that we could find that was still workable.
Yeah, I have to say, if we would have sharpened them, which I mean, could have, but if we would have got them really sharp, they'd be dangerous. Because they're very sturdy. Turned out very tough.
Yeah, these claws should hold up to constant use for a long time. Here's the proper hip technique that you'll see taught in schools.
I learned that from Bruce Lee. You can put your hip into it. Put your hip into it.
I'm not sure if that's what he meant, but it works.
Oh yes. Bruce Lee, born in San Francisco in 1940. And this is how you cut wire.
Be wire, my friend.
Be like wire. Tough and hard to bend. Bend, don't break.
Making sure they fit against the knuckle tightly and they're going to stay in place.
I think, yeah. Marking the hole placement on the handle, so I know exactly where to drill. Something about that just doesn't look right.
He's not a masochist, we swear. So now if you have a drill press, it'd be a good time. I've got a Brent, so I just use him.
We need the puny drill press.
So yeah, again, this is a pretty tedious drill work, so if you're not used to drill much, definitely practice before doing this kind of stuff.
Yeah, I don't recommend eyeballing this stuff, but I just happen to have a lot of experience doing that.
You're placing it all together and want to make sure that it fits right in the hand before we glue it all down. Make sure the ankles and everything are right. It's really one of the hardest parts on this is trying to get the claws straight. A lot of the kits that you buy, you know, they come with the claws off of it, so if you've never fooled with this before, it can be a chore. Especially with the heavier gauge wire that we're using.
It's the proper Wolverine. Pinky in the air.
He's ready to drink some tea.
Once we get the claws bent to where they need to be, we use super glue to glue the wire into the claw part. And what was the glue we used in the handle?
It was a Tweetine 10-minute cement. It's old glue that we had laying around. I'm not even sure if it was really good, but it didn't work out good at all. So
yeah, it ended up giving us problems. So we were just being impatient. We wanted to see the claws done, but we ended up using JB Weld, and it worked great. And I would actually recommend using JB Weld on the claw part and the handle.
it takes a few hours for JB Weld to set up, so the hardest part is just to make sure you set them to where they're not going to shift on you. And of course, like we're doing here, just make sure you sand all your smooth edges, metal, all that good stuff. If you ever do plastics, always rough them up before you glue them. Good old super glue.
Yeah. Which, I mean, the super glue worked pretty good, you know.
Yeah.
It held, but
Yeah, the only, I think, downside to super glue is it's a hard glue, and you know, a hard impact will break it loose. So.
yeah, and again, sticking with the sturdy theme.
Yeah, all the props that we sell will be JB welded. These, like I said, are just kind of a test run. I'll show you a quick, easy way to make them. Make sure they're straight. We did the same process on the handle. We just kind of skipped that. It's the same thing. Just pour your glue in and let it set.
Here I'm just doing some finishing touches on the knuckles, making sure it looks like it's coming out of your skin between your hands.
Trying to make sure they're all perfect.
So here we're using a chrome paint, and I'm not sure what brand we used, but just about all the top-notch chrome paints are actually really nice looking. It's turned out really good.
Yeah, I mean, you can put, you know, the more coats, the more metallic it turns out. I think.
Would recommend doing a clear coat though. You know.
Yeah, without a clear coat, you do leave fingerprints and smudges even after it's as dry as it's going to get. So a clear coat should help prevent that and give it a little bit glossier finish. As if these need to be glossier. But if you want to blind somebody going down the road with them, you just put a clear coat on them.
Finished claws. And I was really happy with the way they turned out.
If you enjoyed our video, don't forget to hit like and subscribe. On our next episode, we'll be tackling the iconic Magneto helmet. Feel free to comment or suggest on any props that you'd like to see us build. You can click the link below for information on purchasing any of our products. See you next time.